Hello, Dog TV. Welcome back. We haven't done these in a little while, but we felt this was a super important topic. We brought on some of the industry's best to talk about it. Please welcome first my co-host for Dog TV Chats, Laura Nativo. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Very welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Just to remind the audience, Laura is a dog trainer, pet lifestyle expert, television personality, extreme dog mom, entrepreneur overall, and also guest blogger on our blog talking about a whole bunch of topics. But today we're talking about pet obesity. What does that mean for you, Laura?
So Pet Obesity Awareness Month, to me, this is something that we should be conscious of all year long, but I think it's very relevant right now. The summer's ending, the temperatures are cooling down, and we're all getting ready for our pumpkin spice season. A lot of people, as the winter approaches, we think holidays, we think baking and cooking and all these like yummy things where we may bulk up a little bit as people. But for our dogs, it's very important because even if you have a 10-pound dog, just 1 pound can make a tremendous impact on their health. So National Pet Obesity Awareness Month is a time to kind of take a step back and really examine our dog's health and think, are we doing the best we can as pet parents? And I'm so excited to chat with Dr. Ernie Ward because I love that he, has created this holiday. I think it's so important for all of us.
Very much so. And while you're listening to this, how do you, if you're watching this live, or think about it if you're not watching it live, how do you keep your dog healthy? What are some actionable steps you do? What are some things you're going to do after you listen to this? And so for our guest today, he literally wrote the book, made the day, made the foundation. Please welcome Dr. Ernie Ward, America's pet advocate, author of 3 different books, and the founder of Pet Obesity Prevention Foundation and the Awareness Day. Welcome, Dr. Ernie.
Oh, wow. Joe, Laura, thank you so much for having me. And, while I don't quite consider it a holiday, I definitely agree that it's something that we need to talk about. And obesity, again, without a doubt, is our pet's #1 health threat. And so I really appreciate this opportunity to share with your audience.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Let's talk about sort of let's define it first. What does obesity mean? Because Laura said, 1 pound on a 10-pound dog, that could be a difficulty. What does that sort of mean in the clinical sense?
Right. And that's one of the reasons that the Association for Pet Obesity Prevention is so important on a global standpoint, because up until a year ago, we did not have an international consensus on actually what the definition of pet obesity was. Now, as mind-blowing as that may be, we've been working on a document for over 4 years to try to get some consensus around what is obesity? Is it 30% above ideal weight? Is it a certain amount of body fat? What does it actually mean? And while the definition is pretty simple on one hand, it's also very nuanced and complicated on the other, because, when we think of obesity as veterinary professionals, we're thinking about what's happening inside, the damage to the organs, this chronic systemic inflammation, the robbing of life. So for us, we're going into the medical standpoint, and a lot of people are just going, "Hey, my dog looks fat," and we totally wanted to make sure that we addressed all of that in the definition. And if you're curious, if you're watching today, I really encourage you to go to petobeసిtyprevention.org. We are the only organization that's not any way affiliated with like a pet food company or a drug company. I mean, we're 100% independent, and I have fought hard to make sure that we maintain that, independence. But it really is important to go and look through some of the documents. And one of the things that we're most proud of is this whole global initiative around obesity, where we define obesity, where we make a universal scale. Just think until last year, we had 3 different scales that veterinarians were using. And so suddenly they would say, "Dr. Ward, I've got a dog with a body condition of 4. The next question was, what scale are you using? That could be an ideal weight dog, or that could be a dog that's overweight or obese. So, again, trying to get this whole thing to, sort of some consensus. And then the other thing that might surprise, the audience today, because we're all pet parents here, is the fact that pet obesity still is not recognized as a disease. Now, we have 22 of the world's largest veterinary organizations that have signed on that they agree with us that pet obesity is a disease, just like the American Medical Association says it's a disease, just like the CDC and the World Health Organization and so forth. But we still don't have general consensus around the globe. In fact, we're kind of still working with our counterparts in the UK and in Canada because they've been slow to come on board. But that's a lot of that other stuff that's happening that I wanted to start off by saying, what is obesity? And really, this is where your veterinarian is going to do something called a body condition score. It's really not the weight on the scale that we're interested in, right? We don't chase numbers on a scale. We're actually trying to look at the body composition. If your dog or cat is carrying too much fat, that's known as adipose tissue, that's where the danger begins.
Fair. And doctor, I want to have you move over just slightly to, I believe you're right. For some odd reason, your face got cut a little bit. There it is. Perfect. Awesome. Laura, I know that's something you deal as a trainer. What's some issues that you see regarding pet obesity and how it affects the dog's sort of everyday lifestyle?
Sure. So I think, one of the biggest challenges is cultural, right? This is a social media generation. And as Dr. Ernie said, we've got our doctors who understand what a pet being overweight or obese may be. But then you've got on Instagram and Facebook, you see all of these videos of like the roly-poly, cute, chubby dog, and everybody's laughing and, oh, how cute is this, like, fat dog that can barely walk. And so from a trainer perspective, I look at it very differently, thinking like this is a dog who is suffering internally, medically, and we as pet parents have to start to recognize what the symptoms are and be more accountable, not just in our once a year vet visit, but really like making time to take an accurate measurement of our dogs, doing monthly weigh-ins, taking a look at their body, really feeling their rib cage, and really getting to know our pets, because each of our dogs are different and we are going to be their first line of defense to know if there are any sudden changes, whether weight gain or weight loss. So I think it's really important that we are our pet's best advocate. And a healthy dog, that's a dog that's happier. That's a dog who's going to be able to keep up with you on the walks, the hikes, the paddle boards, tug, fetch, flirt, pull. There are so many fun ways to keep your dog fit, no matter how old your dog is. This is something that really means a lot to me, having my Preston live to be almost 18 years old. I mean, that was extraordinary. And I think his weight and his health, in spite of all of his medical conditions, I think that was a very important of his overall well-being.
Right. Very much. That really bears repeating, because the secret to longevity in our pets, and quite frankly, it also has a lot to do with our own longevity, is maintaining a lean, healthy body condition. And so when, people say, well, it's a chunky cat, he's a fat, happy cat, he's a happy dog, I'm going to feed him what he wants. We're really robbing them of life expectancy. And more importantly, we're contributing to the development of a multitude of diseases, including cancer, diabetes, kidney failure, crippling arthritis, high blood pressure. I mean, the list goes on and on. So if you really want to do one thing to help your dog or cat live a happier, healthier, longer life, you're going to pay attention to their body condition.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very, very I think it's interesting that the medical industries, the pet industry is kind of catching up to. So Dr. Ernie, as you see this foundation being started, what are some of the biggest misunderstandings in regards to changing a dog's or a cat's body composition? Is it take them to the gym? Is it, what does that look like?
Yeah, and that's a great place to start. Weight loss for humans and dogs is nearly identical. So if you yourself are trying to maintain a healthy body condition, or you want your dog to slim down and reach their optimal weight and condition, the first thing you got to realize is it's about 60 to 70% what you feed or what you eat. I mean, this multiple studies have backed this up. And so, even in my early books back in 2009, 2010, I was trying to tell people, hey, it starts at the food bowl, right? So 60 to 70% of weight loss or maintaining a healthy weight is what we feed our dogs and cats. Now, for cats, that equation gets flipped over on its head because cats have a completely different energy system, a completely different metabolism. And for them, it's about 90% what you feed them, and only about 10% of activity is going to contribute to weight loss. And this is why it is so difficult to lose even a couple of pounds on a cat. In fact, most cats can only safely lose about a half a pound a month. So you can see now when I see a chonky cat that needs to lose 6 pounds, well, already that's a year that I'm going to have to try to keep this cat moving forward. So again, it's the majority of what we need to focus on is what we're feeding, how much we're feeding, quite frankly, even when we're feeding them.
Yep.
To that point, Ernie, I think this is one of my biggest takeaways for pet parents, because as a trainer who is passionate about positive reinforcement, I see a lot of people struggling with, well, how much food and how much treats am I giving my dog? Mm-hmm. I always talk about rationing your dog's daily meal. You have to feed your dog, but rather than dumping that food in a bowl, if you take your dog's daily allotment of food, treats, consult with your veterinarian about what's healthy based on their goals, you can put that food into a Tupperware or a Ziploc baggie or a treat pouch, and you can be working with your dog throughout the day. So rather than, dumping their food in the bowl and then you're giving them lots of treats throughout the day, be conscious about every single morsel that goes into their mouth. You want that to be nutritious, healthy, and be a reward for good behavior.
Yeah, like I say, if you're going to give your dog or your cat a treat, make it count. And so you want it to be functional, nutritious, and low calorie.
And something I have to remind my kids, table scraps count as food. They're not in a separate category. They're the same thing. Make sure you understand that. What is some unrecognized health detriments from obesity? You talked about a couple of them, but maybe behavioral things that people are trying to deal with, or mental or physical. What are some things that you've seen?
Yeah, without a doubt, it's systemic inflammation. And so, I really do, by the time your dog is limping or your cat is having accidents outside of the litter box, it's too late. I mean, the damage is now largely irreversible. So we're trying to catch those really subtle signs of hidden disease. And this is why, again, having your dog or cat's body condition done every year, maybe even more often if you're at the vet, they should do it every time. You should demand your vet say, hey, what's my dog's body condition? What's my cat's body? Every time. Just make that your mantra. And if you walk out of your vet's office without a BCS score, you call me, because I'm going to call that.
You guys do that. We'll put his number. We won't put his number down below.
Everybody gets Dr. Ernie's cell phone.
That's right. But regardless, when we're looking at that systemic inflammation is where that's really the origin of cancer, of diabetes, of arthritis, of high blood pressure, kidney failure. Because what I see when I see a dog with obesity, a cat with obesity, all I'm seeing is this adipose tissue, this fat tissue that is secreting nonstop harmful chemicals and compounds. We use a term called adipokines, or adipocytokines is sometimes used in the literature, but these are compounds that shouldn't be produced in excess. And so now when your dog is carrying around 2 extra pounds of fat, that means it's just dumping this continuous deluge of harmful chemicals and compounds. And so, for me, when they're limping, when they've got diabetes, it's like, oh, wow, why? I just wish I could rewind the tape of life, so to speak, and intervene earlier. And this is why I will tell you, if you have a young dog or cat and you're watching today, if they are less than a year of age, this is something to take very, very seriously, because over the years, myself and Dr. Alex German, a good colleague of mine in the UK, we have done a variety of projections and charts and research showing that we can predict with almost certainty which dog or cat will develop obesity by age 9 months because of their growth curve. So this is something to really take note. If you have an older dog, okay, so now it's an adult from, let's say, age 1 to 7, it's never too late. In fact, you want to intervene before they get into the senior years, because what really breaks my heart the most are the 9 or 10-year-old Labrador retrievers that come in, as Laura described. They're crippled with arthritis, right? They're starting to have kidney failure. They have a cancer. The cat has diabetes. And now, honestly, there's very little I can do. I'm now I'm plugging holes in the physiology, so to speak. And so that's what breaks my heart, because you just wish you could take that 9 or 10-year-old lab and say, wow, I wish we had intervened at age 3. Because here's the fact, and there have been 2 lifetime studies done to back this up. If your dog or cat is overweight, or obese, of course, it's going to have a decrease in life expectancy of 2 to 2.5 years. Now, I mean, that's unconscionable. So I think we all, as responsible pet parents, owe it to our pets to try to help them live as long as possible and as healthy as possible.
Wow, that is an
I was just going to say, it's so true, because we are the ones who are responsible for making choices for them. Our dogs can't go to the grocery store and look at the labels and decide what they're going to feed themselves. They're dependent on us. And so that's why we all have to step up and be accountable from day one when we bring a new dog or cat into our home.
And Laura, it's really important to note that this is a disease. You know, like I somehow, like, it does break my heart. I'm constantly being sent these Instagram and TikToks from concerned pet parents, and they're going, "Oh my gosh, have you seen this?" Because that dog that they're making fun of, just as you described, you know, that's a dog with the disease. And I often, you know, flip this and I say, what if that was a cancer patient, right? Would we be laughing at that? Would it be somehow socially appropriate? And so you can see how this alarms me greatly, because, you know, again, it's a disease just like cancer or diabetes or liver failure or whatever. And it's just, we shouldn't be making fun of it. We should be saying, how can we avoid this? And remember too, if you're out there and you're saying, gosh, you know, my dog or cat has always struggled with their weight, it's not just what we feed or overfeed and under exercise. There's genetics at play. There are environmental pollutants. I mean, microplastics, for example. BPA has long been connected with obesity in humans and lab animals. And so certainly we believe that that translates to dogs and cats. You know, there are hormonal imbalances, diseases, drugs. There's a whole another multitude of factors that can cause your dog or cat to gain weight or not lose weight effectively. You know, and I'll tell you right now, if you've got a dog and you are trying to help it lose weight, two things. Number one, dog or cat, always change the diet within 90 days if you're not getting the results you want. Too many pet parents come to me. I see them on second or third opinion. They're like, I've been feeding this special food for my vet for a year and my dog gained weight. Well, that's ridiculous, right? I mean, we should have changed that at least at 90-day intervals. The second thing is, if you have a dog, make sure it is tested for thyroid disease. Again, I see this too often where the dog comes in and he's struggled to lose weight for the past year and a half. And I'm like, well, where's the thyroid panel? And you know, nothing was done, or they just did one of these preliminary screening tests for thyroid disease and it misses the majority of those cases.
I couldn't agree more. The reclassification of it. And Ernie, I'll ask you to move again. I don't know what you're drifting that way. I'm gonna move a little bit to the camera, to your right. But yeah, I think reclassifying and understanding its disease, and understanding when you said that the 2.5 years, my heart broke.
Yeah.
I mean, think about all those snuggles and all those moments and all that life left.
Well, Joe, let me just make it even harder. I mean, imagine a veterinarian. We have that proverbial crystal ball. So I'm looking at that 16-pound cat and I'm seeing the ending and it ain't pretty, right? So, I mean, that's what really, you know, I can tell you what frustrates me so much, because you sit there across the exam room table from a loving, caring pet parent, dog or cat, and suddenly you're saying, hey, we need to do this, this, and this because here's how it ends. And they walk out of there not doing anything, you know? And then of course you see them a year later and suddenly now there's a catastrophe. And this is what I always say, nobody cares about obesity till it's a catastrophe. And that's what I mean, because it's like, well, now my dog's limping. Now my dog can't jump in the truck, you know, or whatever. And it's like, hey dude, where were you last year?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it's also about the quality of life. If you think about, you know, look at these older folks that are running marathons, you see the old guy on the hiking trail. We want that to be our dogs. We want our dogs every day to count. And so as our dogs are approaching their golden years, I think the greatest gift we can give is the gift of health, for them to be able to enjoy every day. And even if they're not going on their long hikes, they can still do low impact exercise, canine conditioning, fun enrichment games. And, you know, I think that's one of the blessings that I was lucky to have with Preston is, you know, up until 2 weeks before I lost him, he was still like, he was blind and deaf, and he was playing Treasure Bowl enrichment games in the Grand Canyon. And that's one of the nicest things that we can do for our pets who are so loyal to us, to make sure that every single day matters until, you know, we have to say goodbye.
Yeah, because Laura, these changes aren't inevitable. They're not unavoidable. People seem to think that aging means a decline and demise in activity and vigor and ability. And that's just not true at all. I mean, it is really how we take care of ourselves, the food that we eat, you know, the activities we do, the restorative rest that we get. I mean, and all these same tenets apply to our pets. And so, you know, I really do have strong objections with even my veterinary colleagues who are like, well, he's a 12-year-old lab. He's going to be slowing down. I am sorry, but that is not how aging works, right? I mean, healthy aging, sure, that dog may not be as strong as it was when it was 2 years old, but doesn't mean it's incapacitated. And that's sort of where we are. We're at this default mechanism where we go, okay, when humans get to be 50, they no longer can do anything. Well, doggone it, I'm 54 and I'll put myself against anybody on an Ironman break day. So my point is, the same thing for dogs. Like when I was graduating from vet school in 1992, literally people were like, well, if it's a 10-pound lab, he's going to be racked with arthritis. He won't be able to, do anything enjoyable. He'll just basically lay around in front of a fireplace somewhere. And yet today I'm seeing 10, 12, 14-year-old labs that are going out to parks and catching Frisbees and going on long walks at the beach. And that is really redefining aging and changing our expectations, Joe, of what aging really means. Because, sure, I'm not as strong or as fast as I was in my 30s. It's certainly not, at Ironman or doing any of the ultra endurance things that I do. But having said that, I'm still able to do it.
Very much so. And there's a lot of 30-year-olds that might not be able to, including myself from the Ironman side. Very, very impressive. Well, let's talk about the Pet Obesity Awareness Day. What is that about? How can people become involved in a healthy way? Because we want to make sure that we're approaching dog owners that we might know that have an overweight dog that might think of, back several years of like, it's just a fat dog. Don't worry about it. He's happy. He loves steak. He eats it all the time. How can we participate in that day? And then how can we be positive advocates moving forward?
Yeah, and Joe, and you're right, and they're right. The dog is happy until they're not, and then it's a catastrophe, right? So nobody cares about obesity till it's a catastrophe, and that's sadly how often. So what happened was in 2005, at the prompting of several of my colleagues, in fact, the esteemed colleague Dr. Steve Budsberg, who is past president of the American College of Veterinary Surgeons, I had been pestering everybody that would listen. Man, pet obesity is a problem. What are we doing? We're not doing anything about it. So I founded, along with Steve and a handful of others, the Association for Pet Obesity Prevention back in 2005. And then the next year, we realized, wow, we've got to somehow get this message out to our veterinary colleagues. So really the Awareness Day, which is held every second Wednesday of October, and there's a story behind clinical, cases. So that we were trying to get prevalence data, which is where this whole thing really started. And so we were just really wanting our colleagues to say, wait a second, obesity is a disease. Obesity is something that we need to be talking more about with our pet parents, and obesity is something that we need to be intervening in medically whenever possible. And so it just sort of grew. And I think that, in the early days, Joe and Laura, I was really ridiculed, quite frankly, by my professional colleagues, because, this is the era, if you think about this is the era of Garfield. So Garfield was eating pasta, seemed perfectly content, and here's this crazy vet going, no, Garfield is at risk of dying.
That attacks Garfield.
Right. And so all we're really trying to do is start conversations like Awareness Day. And again, as opposed to the joke about the holiday, we're really just trying to say, can this spark a conversation? And that's why it's important for us to be on platforms like Dog TV and work with people like you and Laura, because we want those conversations to occur. And we know that there's a critical barrier to that conversation, and it's called lack of confidence by the veterinarian. The veterinarian does not want to inadvertently offend you, the pet parent. That's really the first barrier, because they're going, oh my gosh, somehow they're going to think I'm judging them as a bad pet parent. Somehow they're going to say, well, dude, you ought to get in better shape before you talk to me about my fat dog. There's a lot of psychology, and I've written a lot of textbook chapters around this. We did an entire peer-reviewed study. We've done 2 of them now in different textbooks, where we've looked at the psychology behind why that conversation isn't happening. So for us, this is a great opportunity for you as a pet parent to say, hey, what about my dog's weight? What about my cat's body condition? Because if you can drive that conversation, then the vet feels much more comfortable, and of course, it's got to be reciprocated, because, many times I'm sitting there talking to the pet parent and they're like going, no, he's not. Don't want to hear it, and that's also frustrating. And we respect those. Again, if you don't feel comfortable talking, if it's not ready, the time you're not ready for it, then we get it. And I tell vets, hey, just table that one till the next year.
Understand it. That's a wonderful advice. Make sure You get your BCS score every time you walk in or call Dr. Ernie. You can head over to his site, drernieboard.com. Head over to petobesityprevention.org to get more information. Dr. Ernie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for fighting the good fight and for bringing awareness to this very important disease for pet obesity. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. And I love everything that Dog TV does. It's an incredibly essential service. And so pet parents, you're really lucky that people like Joe are out there really fighting the really good fight, because they're trying to give you a wide variety of information to help you be a better pet parent. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Ernie. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you on those Ironmans one of these days.
You bet. Or on the ocean.
I'll see you in the ocean. You got to come visit us in California, and we'll take the dogs for a paddleboard.
You bet.
That'll be a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Dr. Ernie.
Dr. Ernie.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow. My mind is blown.
A wealth of information.
Very much so. I need to make sure I have my dog's BCS score, BCS right away. Calling the vet. If not, I'm scheduling that appointment right away. Well, Laura, I know you are our resident dog trainer, and you're going to walk people through on how to do a very important thing on how to get onto the scale. So a little trick, a little training, a little fun with your dog. And so let's get started. We have a video here.
All right, let's see. This is Delilah Jane. Let's see how she does.
Change the layout a little bit. There we go. Awesome. So maybe explain the clip first, and then we can start it, play through it once, and then we'll pause and go as we go from there.
Perfect. So this is Delilah Jane. I am going to demonstrate how to turn getting on and off the scale into a game. Every time we go to the vet's office, you see there's some dogs who willingly jump up, and you see other dogs who are a little bit afraid. Maybe they're overwhelmed just being in the veterinary environment. So one of the best things we can do for our dogs is practice at home. You can buy a dog scale for very little money. If you have friends and family, maybe you all chip in and you get one, and then you take turns practicing. Or if you have a small dog, you can actually get onto your own human scale with yourself first, and then take your dog and, kind of do the math. But for our larger dogs like Delilah Jane, teaching them to get up onto an object, to remain still, and then to get off on cue is a great way to do a monthly check-in. So let's watch how Delilah does.
Awesome. Let's go.
Hop it up.
Good job.
Very nice. Can you stand? Stay.
So I'm pausing her because I want to read the scale.
Good girl. Very good. Good job, Deej.
Yay, Delilah.
So I saw, like, when she got on the scale, you paused her. What was that? What was that all about?
Yeah, so I paused her because so when you have a scale, you always have to adjust it so that it starts at 0. That kind of takes a few seconds. When the dog gets on, you're going to see the scale numbers changing as they're moving and getting settled. If they're wagging their tail, if they're lifting a paw, we might not get an accurate read. So what you'll see I do, because Delilah has practiced this a lot, I delay my reinforcement and I wait until she's perfectly still for me to see the numbers. And once I can see the numbers on the scale, then I can accurately read her weight, and that's when I'm going in to pay her. And you'll see, I ask her to do a high five. I ask her to stand, to sit. I want the scale to be just another fun place. So a lot of you are doing agility, and you might have, a platform, or you're doing some type of work that requires your dog to go to a contact or go to a bed. This is just one more object that we're teaching our dogs to become comfortable getting on, staying on, and getting off.
And we have a question from the audience, from Susan. What training treats do you use?
I don't know you, Susan, but you're awesome. This is actually my own brand of training treats. I wanted a treat that was really clean. They're freeze-dried raw, and all of our ingredients are basically super healthy proteins combined with broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, and chagas mushroom powder. So they're really clean. Delilah, do you want to come over and say hi? Yeah. Oh, Delilah's just waking up. We're in a hotel. She says, please, 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 may I have some num-nums? So these treats, what I like about them is they're really, if you can see, They're very tiny. So when we're using treats for training, whether you use Num Nums or whatever else, I always recommend getting the tiniest treats or finding a way to break them up, because a tiny, healthy, high-value treat is going to go a long way in your training. And it's a good way to keep your dog healthy by not over-treating them.
Very much so. I want to watch this one more time so I can get some things, and we will put this on our YouTube channel and our blog. And Laura, you just wrote a blog for us for Pet Obesity Month. I'm going to put it in the in the comments right now so people can see it. But maybe if you can remember some of the amazing tips, you can walk through maybe one or two of those. Learn how to read pet food and treat labels. I know that's one of your tips. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that, and we'll let them read the rest of them.
Sure. So I think, one of the most important things we can do as pet parents is really learn to not only read the label, but to decipher. So if I read my bag of Num Nums, I've got salmon, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, blueberries, mushroom. Pretty simple. I can look up any of those ingredients and I can read about the nutritional benefits. There are some treats out there that have a lot of fillers, a lot of processed things. I'm not here to disparage any other brands, but I recommend when you're reading, especially if it's an ingredient that you can't pronounce, go and look it up. And there's a really great website by Susan Thixton. She's one of my heroes in the nutrition space. She has a website called truthaboutpetfood.com. And when I first started getting into the dog wellness world, my Preston, we're going back to 2008, 2009. He was only 5 years old. And so I started reading that website. I started reading a book called Food Pets Die For by Ann Martin. And you start to really understand the pet food industry and how a lot of what goes into our pets' food, it's not really anything we should be proud or feel comfortable feeding. And so for me, I really research not only what is in the label, but I study the company. Where are they sourcing their ingredients from? Are they from the US? Are they from overseas? And I think it's really important because we make the same choices for ourselves, for our children. Why shouldn't our dogs deserve, the very best high quality human grade ingredients possible?
Agreed. Thank you so much for that. And there are plenty of tips. And we also have an interview with a doctor on the blog as well. So go ahead over there, read the blog.
Your Healthy Dog Workshop.
Yeah, so exciting stuff. There's obesity and health. They're connected, interrelated, but we're trying to give you as much advice and tips. So Laura, thank you so much. A very big thank you to our guest, Dr. Ernie Ward, and his mission to bring pet obesity to the forefront. And I wanted to remind everybody, Laura and I will be back on October 29th, the same time, to talk about a big event coming up, Halloween, and what that looks like across the country. Some places door-to-door will happen. Some places social distancing will happen. But we're going to give you tips and tricks on being a pet parent, on how to deal with any situation that your state is in or that you feel comfortable putting your dog into, whether through drive-up trick-or-treating.
Drive-by trick-or-treating?
Yeah, or just when you're on your walk, you might see people in masks and how to deal with that. So come back October 29th. And then send over your questions as well. We'll try to get them answered. Laura, as always, very pleasure.
Thank you. I always have a great time chatting with you, Joe. Thank you and Dog TV for all you're doing to help empower pet parents. Can't wait to see you on the next one.
Sounds good. We look forward to it. Have a safe and healthy and happy day. Till we talk soon. Bye, everybody.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.